Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching Beyond the Book with Julie. This is the education series, and today I am here with Dr. Stephanie Newman. Stephanie is a New York clinical psychologist who specializes in students and parents and has worked with an array of different people and personalities. And her latest book out, Barbarians at the PTA. Can you hold up your book? Love it. Love it. I love the cover, the boxing gloves. Pink is perfect. And the white picket fence, of course, because, you never know what mother lives behind that picket fence, do you?
We have a lot to talk about, don't we? I'm happy to be here in the education series, part of the education series. What a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and you have such a wealth of expertise and knowledge and experience as a
And a
mother.
ringing phone.
That's okay. You are a mother. You have a son who is in high school, managing through Zoom and a hybrid life in COVID, as well as a daughter at Georgetown. And you also work with students who are becoming or studying to become therapists over at Columbia University. So you just know everything about student life and dealing with different people. Let's jump right in.
What an intro. I don't know everything, but thank you for the vote of confidence. I know some things, and I'm happy to share what I know, but I don't know everything.
And you decided to write an entire book about the barbarians at the PTA. So yes. Why? How did you come up with the material, and what propelled you to spend the time? Because books take a long time to write. And
take a long
what
time.
did you just keep seeing over and over that pushed you to write this?
I wrote the book because I wanted to start a conversation. Again, the title Barbarians at the PTA is a colorful title. It's meant to signal that it will be fun, a fun read with maybe with some serious undertones. I will say that when you're a psychologist, a mom, a person in the community, and teaching also, you might be in your office and somebody comes to you with their notes and they talk to you about the different therapy sessions they, as a student of psychology, have had all week. And you hear themes. And then you go sit in your kitchen the next morning and you're having coffee with the neighbor down the street who's crying into the coffee mug because this happened. And then you see whatever you see when you do a school drop-off. And then you hear whatever you hear at a PTA meeting, and then you have your own practice where you listen to what people talk about. And I began to hear similar themes. I felt like there was a set of parents, a subset, who were very, very much over involved. I have empathy for why somebody would be so involved and want to help their children. I really do know that it's hard to, once you step in and you feel the pain of watching your child be disappointed, it's hard to know when to step back out or how to step back out. Empathy is you're in, but then you get back out. You know it's not your thing. You've felt it along with the other person, and it does become hard when it's your own child. The boundaries blur. So I heard these themes over and over again, and I found I was going to call it Bully Moms, thinking that would be a really fun title. But the advice I got was that is a nice title, but it sounds like nonfiction. And this is completely fiction. I'm not doing a tell-all about my town. I'm not writing about my patients. It's completely made up. So,
but you get the material from somewhere, and you start.
I did, to try to start a conversation about what's going on in some of the school settings or amongst some of the parents. How are people behaving, and what pitfalls are there for parents who want to let their kids navigate things, and then there's other parents who it becomes an arms race because they're so involved and they're social engineering so much that if you don't try to help, then your kid might be at a disadvantage. It's sort of like when everybody gets 10 tutors and then your kid's just taking the test because they studied on their own, but the other people have been prepared by NASA engineers, and your kid is at a disadvantage even though you're doing what.
Right. It's not an equal playing field, and how much of that is too much involvement from parents. So that is another important question is in your practice and what you've seen, uh, what advice can you shed for parents on, giving your kids an arm's distance and letting them work things out? I think that we as parents are easy to, be right there and to break every fall because of course we love our kids and we think it's our duty to never let them have any scrapes or aches. What do you think about that?
I think that disappointment's inevitable for kids, and it's really the parents' job to understand that they may need to stumble and let them feel what they feel and teach them how to be resilient by helping them through it. But disappointment's inevitable, and it's what you do with it as a parent that's really what counts.
And in your practice, what have you seen as some of the most detrimental ways that parents get too involved?
I just wrote a piece for Scary Mommy, which is a really great website. People probably know it. And it was basically about the new pandemic mom. The new identity is that you used to, as a mom, I think dads too, but this may be a pitfall moms fall into more. You used to think that if you were helicoptering, which was the old lingo, snowplow, you would run in there and fix everything. So they get the best grade, they get invited to the school dance, they get into the carpool, you just try to make sure you fixed every single thing. Now with the pandemic, it's pretty hard to fix certain things, and parents are learning maybe they have to do things a little differently. So that's what I just wanted to mention. I had just written that because you were asking me one question ago about really what this came from and what moms do and what we should look out for. So the worst thing I've ever seen, I think a lot of people talk about, and I'm using composite type of things that I've seen, whether I've heard about them in some way through a supervisee or in some way watched it or heard it from a neighbor or lived through something. The worst thing is when parents try to socially engineer things and get so involved that they want their kid to be friends with certain kids or they want certain things to go a certain way. They pick the team, they make the party list, they make the carpools, and some kids get left out, and the collateral damage is really substantial to those kids. That hurts a lot. And sometimes we should just let the kids figure it out themselves. They're separate. I sometimes say to people in therapy or something when they're having trouble with boundaries, as a way to tease them a little and help them so that it doesn't become so overwhelming. But you're over here and that person's over there. Look, so you're separate. Like your child isn't you.
Right.
They could figure it out.
How do we help adolescents know that they can have boundaries even from their parents? That's something I always think about.
Agreed. I think that you allow them to not have to share every single thing, to close their doors, they all have phones now. Many people have phones. They're allowed to have a private life. That's not to say that you, as a parent, don't check in, don't notice if something's wrong where you really need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But there can be a boundary, and they don't have to. You shouldn't be in their business day to day. They're allowed to have privacy.
Right. Yep. It's very important, but it is hard. And especially in the pandemic, I think pre-pandemic, we were trying to teach kids to have, a little distance from their devices, right? And to only be on it, maybe an hour a day. And they were so overscheduled anyways, they didn't have so much time for it. Now, all of that has gone out the window. They're on their device all day and all night, because I know in New York and where you are, it's different. But over here in Los Angeles, where I am, they're still completely on Zoom and not going to class at all. There's not a hybrid model set up yet. In some parts, like in in Orange County area, kids are going back to school, but in our area, they are not yet. And
Okay, if you can believe this, I think I will, in a way, make you laugh and cry at the same time. Back when dinosaurs walked the earth 7 months ago, before there was a pandemic, the American Academy of Pediatrics said, we recommend no more than 2 hours a day of screen time. Let's just stop. We're all on screens
you and I
20 hours a day. I
are.
mean,
Right.
by the time I get out of bed, first thing to brush my teeth, I've probably had 2 hours of screen time. I feel like we're all really on screen.
Totally. Yes.
Those recommend they
Yeah.
have gone out the window, and it's important if you're online school for 8 hours. They say replace screen time, entertainment, games with maybe something physical or a book or something creative. So at least in your leisure time, if you're doing online school, it's
Right.
not no longer possible to limit it to 2 hours a day that you're looking at a screen. But
Now you're just hoping that they get out away from their device maybe 30 minutes in a
yes,
24-hour period. I mean, if they get away from their device for 2 hours, that is huge, right? That
but I will say to you, and you mentioned that even in the middle of the night, kids might be on their phones. I have always had a rule. This is what works for me, and I don't judge. But if people ask me, I have always had a rule. You do not have the phone on when you go to bed. You do not have your laptop open, and you do not have a desktop open. And if it's hard for kids to follow these rules, I take it out
yeah,
because no one needs to be awakened by a text. I've heard this time and again at 2 a.m.
right.
and this happened, and then the kid doesn't go back to sleep because they're totally freaked out about something social or
And then they
whatever
can't
they,
manage it because they're sleep deprived.
right.
Yes.
So I really do I set a boundary and a limit. There is no device on when you go to sleep, and if they don't follow that, I take it out of the room.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No,
I mean,
I tried what?
I mean,
No, I try to enforce as well. Like 10 p.m., put your device in the kitchen on a charger and leave it until you wake up. I think that's so important. I've always read that the devices should not be in the bedroom where you're sleeping at all.
right.
So yes, but that gets really hard, right? Because it's like I go around at 10 p.m. and then I'm still doing homework or I'm talking to so-and-so or can I have 5 more minutes? And being the police on that is really difficult too. So, and then it's like, where are the bound? Oh, it's just a whole can of worms in itself. But let's get back to this. So Barbarians at the PTA, were you worried about, using the title PTA? I mean, does that put all of the members in the PTA in in one ball of wax and they're all barbarians? And I mean, I can imagine a lot of backlash on that. What were your thoughts?
Right. Why is the word PTA in here? Because it's a very convenient signpost so people can know, oh, this is going to be a story about schools, a story about parents. I have enormous respect for PTA parents. I have volunteered for years in organizations, in classrooms, and it was really a matter of convenience. It's a sort of a way of letting everybody know, okay, that's what this is going to be about. Um, I don't think when groups are concerned that you can always paint every group member with the same brush. There's variability in anything. And groups are also the reason why people may act certain ways when the numbers go up, why they may, uh, I think you'd said that you were looking at what's going on in different communities and different PTAs and different groups. Um, it, Things change when there's numbers.
Mm-hmm. And when there are more numbers, sometimes they change in a negative way, just like cliques are. Whether you're in high school or elementary school or middle school, you have, the popular girls or, whatever groups of people. And like you have said, you and I have had conversations before. As you say, when numbers grow and you feel mighty in a group, you can start to make others around you feel less than. Does that ever happen in PTA? I mean, these are adults, right? We should all be good examples to our children, but how do things sometimes manifest in a negative way in a PTA?
I will tell you one funny thing when you say we should be models for our children. Um, One job a parent has is to model behavior. And I always think of the kid's eyes are watching you. So if you're a parent and you're driving your car and your kid is in the passenger seat or they're younger, they're in the back seat, and you have some kind of road rage and you say a certain word to another driver or you give them a finger, or you can bet that your kid's watching that and they'll do something like that too. So I'm not perfect. I'm not Gandhi. I'm not, the Buddha, but I do try to think about how I am modeling behaviors for them. And it's the same in the PTA. If you teach your kids by talking at the dinner table that this one's a loser and that one's so annoying and this person's, you know, this and that, and that you only like certain people, and you communicate that there's some sort of weird hierarchy or there's only certain good people, well, that your kids will do that too. Or if you even worse, I think even worse here, I guess I'm making a judgment and it's because of the collateral damage that I referred to before. But if you say to your kids, yeah, you shouldn't be friends with so and so because you as the parent don't like little so and so, um, and then you go out of your way to exclude kids, and then your children will learn that um, it's okay to exclude, and maybe that doesn't bother some parents, and they think that's fine and that's life, and you have to learn that. But I always wanted to teach that you're in a community, and we're all part of a community. So it's really what values you want to impart too.
Right. And, there's a lot of talk right now about, racism and, you know, just all of this divisiveness. And a lot of people are looking to schools to create, a better conversation and what are you doing about it? But I look at that and wonder, what are we doing in our homes? What, like you're saying, those conversations can happen at school and there's limited time for that. But aren't kids really impressionable about what their parents think and how their parents live and act? And we know this from a very, very young age where our parents stand on all of these kinds of social issues, right?
Well, I will tell you that peer group is very powerful for adolescents, and they really do care what this one said and what this one wears, and of course, but they still care what their parents say, and they do learn a lot, and that the modeling is so powerful. I will tell you from social psychology, there were experiments in California, in fact, um, with a bunch of 2-year-olds, and they all got to play with this doll, but some were shown this violent video of people kicking and hitting the doll. It was made intentionally for the experiment. And the kids who saw this video of people like beating the crap out of the doll did that 5 seconds later when they got to play with the doll. So social psychologists do a lot of really interesting studies, and that's one particularly powerful one about modeling. And it's important, if you go around using hate language and having an attitude that certain people are,
Less than
yeah,
or
your kids will
not
pick up on
equal.
that.
Right, right. So the conversation and so, whether it's the PTA or the kids on the playground or the groups, whatever it is, our kids are always watching how we handle situations
They
and
are.
people and how inclusive or how exclusive we are. And if we are open in conversation or if we are judgmental and make assumptions about people, right? So all of those things matter so much.
There's always a bunch of eyes watching you in your house.
Can you shed some light on communication in general? In writing the book, in meeting so many people, students and parents in your practice, how can we elevate the conversation or open the conversation or create communities that are less divisive, right? Whether it's the barbarians at the PTA, or, this group think, how do we break that?
So you're asking me as an adult, how do you do it amongst other adults or adults and how they treat kids?
How adults first can have more open conversations with other adults. How, people who aren't necessarily maybe on the executive board of the PTA feel less than. They still want to help, they want to volunteer, they want to be there for their students, but they're busy. They're trying to put food on the table and they have to
Oh,
work.
yes. Well, certainly the PTA could send out an open, say we're inclusive, we want everyone's input. We understand if you can't come to every meeting, but this is still an organization that will welcome whether you have an hour to give or whether you have 10 hours to give or whether you can be there once a week. You could let people know that. You can certainly in your own home, if you really want to. Um, you can find ways to be friendly to people just by smiling and saying hello, and this sounds ridiculous, but I can't tell you how many times I've been walking, on a casual walk with somebody who will say, so and so never smiles, I don't like so and so, and they would walk by them. And I have found that if you smile first, the other person is so happy to greet you back. And it's hard with masks. It's really hard because, you can't see,
Horrible.
but if you are willing to say hello and smile, sometimes people are shy and they don't know how to say hello, or they want to and they're afraid of being rejected, or sometimes they are awkward, or they're just preoccupied and thinking about they have what everyone makes the resting face joke.
Yes.
um,
Resting.
they look that right. I don't know if I could say it, but they look that way because they have something on their mind. So sometimes coming out of your own, oh, this person's not being nice to
Right,
me.
right. Coming out of your head and not worrying about what other people think. I think that that's a big part of the problem, right? Is that we all worry so much. There's so much fear about how we're being perceived, what people think of us. They're watching us, they're judging us. We can't act this way. We have to be a part of the status quo. We have to just fall in line. But then what are we teaching our kids who, as you say, are watching our every move and learning from us?
The other thing is that sometimes it becomes hard. So everybody's choices are different. So some people, their job is to take care of the family and, like you said, put food on the table, and they go to work and they don't think about, can I go volunteer? Because they are really they have 100% a responsibility to go to work. And then there's people who decide, oh, I'll just be able to stay home and I feel very fortunate and I'm delighted I can do this. I
Mhm.
want to do this. And then there's everything in between.
Mhm.
The one danger that sometimes people have who don't have something outside of the family, what it can just be their garden, it could just be they play a sport, it could be that they are in five book clubs and they talk about books. It doesn't matter. If you have nothing, your personal identity, if you have something that you derive a lot of pleasure about and self-esteem from, and that's a core part of your identity, it does not have to be a job. It's a lot easier for you, I think, in terms of the parenting stuff. You take blows to your children a little bit less hard. The separation's a little bit easier. The over involvement might be a little bit less of a pull because you have a secure identity. And I think the people who struggle the most are the people whose primary source of identities through parenting. I may identify as a mother. It may be the most important thing in the world, but I have other sources of identity and self-esteem and enjoyment, and I don't. I that's part of maybe why sometimes people, it becomes so overblown. She said she was bringing the
Right.
popsicle sticks. Okay, she didn't bring them. Or why did you speak to her that way? The silly things that go on in volunteer organizations that that people can really get pulled into things. Groups, sometimes people do get pulled into behaviors in groups that they wouldn't normally do on an individual level. If you feel good about yourself and you feel like you have a lot of other things that you're thinking about, I really do advise people, don't just take care of your kids and then just volunteer at school. That is a very important thing to do, but find something that's just for you, whatever it is.
Right. So volunteering in school is not considered your passion project and something that you can claim as just for you. Would you say so?
I'm saying from that the way that I look at this as a psychologist and as a person who's worked with parents and written this book, Barbarians at the PTA, is I believe that you should volunteer at the school as much as you want. That's a very important thing. The kids benefit. So there's that. You should be with your kids and parent and get pleasure from that, but have something else that's purely about you and a separate identity. Have some aspect of your identity that's separate. And again, not everybody has a job outside the home, or not everybody has, and some people just have their job and they don't have the luxury to think about all this, or they wouldn't think of it this way. But whatever. I've watched people who are very excited to play a certain sport, and they work on their technique and they work on their, getting better. I've seen people who their garden, I wish I had a garden that looked like that. I've seen people that do all sorts of things.
Your own passion project, something that's for yourself, that gets you.
Or they volunteer at a soup kitchen and they're helping other people. Whatever they're doing, it's something that isn't just about the one aspect of their identity, which is, being a mom.
Right, right. And it also gives them a little distance, right? It gives us distance from our kids. It gives our kids breathing room. And it makes them also, I think, know that they are not the only, they aren't the entire world, right? It's okay for kids to know that you have a life outside of them, that you don't spend 200% of your time doing for them, thinking about them, completely focused only on them, right?
Yes. It's very good for people to know that.
Right. This was such a fun conversation with you. You are wealth of information. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And where can people find you if they want to learn more or get some parenting advice or need a psychologist in New York? They having a hybrid experience.
People can always find, I have a website. It's, I think it's called Psychotherapist Next Door. And I write for Psychology Today online. And I've written this book that I keep showing, Barbarians at the PTA. So it's pretty easy to find any of those things. I always want to say, just go to your indie bookstores right now, anywhere you can, because these stores are pillars of the community. The most important thing is that these small businesses cannot stay in business right now because of the pandemic. And bookstores are like our heart and soul. So if you live in an area where there's a small, mom and pop bookstore and you want to buy this book, I would feel, honored. But any book that you want to buy it from the indies if you can. Certainly Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound. There's a lot of ways to buy a book. So.
Yes, and you have another book, Mad Men on the Couch.
Yep.
Yes.
That was fun too. If you want to know about what makes those characters tick, the fictional characters, according to a psychologist.
Wonderful. And thanks for the reminder. Yes, in our area, in the Pasadena area of California here, we have a really great bookstore, Vroman's Bookstore, and I'm hearing that it's not doing well. The pandemic hit them really hard, and they're on a really big push to get people in there and, buying Christmas gifts or early Christmas gifts, whatever it is. So I hope that people will go over to Vroman's in Pasadena. It's such a great bookshop. Stephanie, hopefully it's still here when you come to visit Los Angeles, and I can take you there.
Or you and I will do a virtual event with Vroman's.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be great. I could take you on a virtual tour of Vroman's. So it'll feel like you're here. I love that idea. Stephanie, thank you so much. So great to be with you. And everyone, thank you for joining us here on the education series of Beyond the Book with Julie. Bye for now.